The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now logged into WarUp on the WPIAL, featuring your hosts Greg Warnock and Jeff Upson. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome into a brand new edition of WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock alongside Jeff Upson. We are into the regular season as we kicked off this past weekend, and we did so in tremendous fashion. Top team in AAA, top team in AA in the WPIAL faced off, and it was a good match.
Yeah, for a very early season matchup, dual meet, it was packed. The gym was packed. There was a lot of good wrestling there, a lot of good action. But yeah, I know Waynesburg and Burrell both love kicking the season off, wrestling each other. It's a good test for both teams.
And as Joe Throckmorton said last week, he'd like to have 5 matchups with Burrell, right?
Yeah.
He'd go to AA if he could get the 5 matchups with Burrell every year, just because of how much he likes that action. So it started off at 182 pounds, and Burrell came out with a quick fall, and then Waynesburg from there with a win. Burrell got a forfeit at 220. So question is, 220, can they fill that spot? Because giving up a forfeit as a top team in WPIAL is going to be tough.
No, they can fill that spot. They have some things they need to get in order, get some guys healthy, but I totally expect them to have that spot filled. But Cole Clark got a big pin for Burrell to start out at 182 against Darnell Johnson, and Noah Tustin followed it up with a nice decision over Ricky Feroci from Burrell, 14-10. That was a kind of back-and-forth match, as you would imagine.
So from there, Waynesburg getting a couple of falls, not too surprising. Ryan Howard and Mac Church. Mac Church as advertised.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, he's a stud, and I think obviously freshman. It's hard to Someone asked me, like, so well, how did Rocco Welsh look? I'm like, well, he only wrestled for 15 seconds, so it's hard to say how he looked. I'll get a better look at him at Ironman this next week.
Sean Szymanski and Nick Salerno both got big wins for Burrell to keep them in at 5-4 and 6-4 victories. But then you had Rocco Welsh, Cole Hammett, both coming down and getting 6-point wins, 15 seconds between the both of them.
Yeah, and the two most impressive performances, actually 3 of them that I saw, had to be Wyatt Henson at 138 over Ian Oswald. He really toyed with him, 11-4. But he was working him, man. Henson looks like he's on a different level. I mean, Ian's a 2-time state medalist, right? He's one of the top guys in the state, and Henson really just took it to him. So I was very impressed with the way he competed at such a high level that early in the season.
Ian Oswald, though, up a couple weight classes here at 138 pounds. Do you expect him to be down at 132? I
mean, I would expect him to go down to 132, just a matter of when. But yeah, he did look. Henson's filled out. Henson looks solid at 138, but Ian definitely probably is going to go down to 132. And then the second performance that I thought was really good was Nate Stevenson from Waynesburg. At 152, he competed against Noah Linderman, and he beat him 12-4, just dominated on his feet. So very impressed with the way he competed, especially coming off a season where he was injured. And then Luca Augustine at 160 for Waynesburg, he beat AJ Corrado 3-0. Really, really solid match for Luca. Going against a guy who's a 2-time state medalist again, and that was a big win for him.
You look at 138 pounds. You mentioned Wyatt Henson looked very full. Do you expect him to stay there at that weight?
I do, but anything's possible, especially with the Waynesburg lineup. I mean, you have a guy, Colton Stone King, who's not in the lineup because he's kind of in a logjam with Rocco, Cole, and Wyatt. So, depending, that's a really good guy to have on the bench. So I'm sure they're going to figure out a way to maneuver some things and plug some guys in. But yeah, I don't know. Wyatt looked pretty good. He's going 138 for Ironman this weekend, so I expect him to be there for the future.
I asked because I do expect him to end up being eligible for the postseason. Just from my gut reaction, I mean, he lived in an entire different state, so I'm not sure why he was even ruled ineligible to begin with. I know Joe Throckmorton couldn't talk too much on it. But there's another guy at 138. He wrestled the Chartiers-Houston tournament, Sam Hilligus. That could be a good matchup for a couple of times if they both stay there.
That would be a great matchup. Both these guys are very highly ranked in the nation. Wyatt had a really good Super 32 over the offseason. Sammy Hilligus is obviously a guy who's been in the national rankings since he was a freshman. Wyatt's going to Iowa. Sammy's going to Virginia Tech. So 2 Division I recruits. Yeah, I'd love to see that 3 times this year. Yeah, it'd definitely be cool.
Yeah, I mean, Powerade for sure would be the first one we would see it at. And then, yeah, if he gets it ruled eligible for the postseason, which, again, I fully expect that to happen, it very well could be the case. So it'll be interesting to see how that breaks down as we head into the upcoming rest of the season. Looking at some other tournaments within the area, the Eastern Area Tournament kicked off at Gateway this past weekend. You look at some of the results and how it went down. Troy Homan comes away with a title at the 106-pound weight class, defeating Chad Ozias of Connellsville.
Yeah, he looked good. He was probably a little undersized last year, and he really looks good this year. He was at the Surge tournament where you and I both got to see him, and he looked good there, and he kind of kept that going here at 106 pounds, so I was impressed with him.
113 pounds, Vinny Citrano of Plum ends up taking away the title, and impressive performance for him throughout as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the weight class, and probably not the deepest one, but Vincent was able to come away with a championship title, and expect him to continue his success throughout the season.
Carter Dybert at 120 pounds. He dominates his way to a title. Do you expect him to end up dropping down?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think a lot of these guys, especially in the beginning of the year, I mean, you got to keep into a consideration. I mean, that's a flat weight, so 113 is a lot different than 115 when they get to 2 pounds. So I expect most of these guys to stay up a weight until that 2 pound in Christmas. So, but Carter looked great. I mean, he beat a really tough Evan Whiteside from Gateway, who actually upset Mason Prinky from Connellsville, who's a returning state medalist. This was a pretty deep weight class. You had Carter, and then Evan, and then also Mason, and then Nico Taddy from West Allegheny. So pretty nice four placers there.
Taddy, and then you got another Chisco.
Yeah, another one. Bose is there, and I think he's going to surprise some people. I think he probably is going to be a little bit under the radar, but depending on where he ends up in weight, I think he could make some noise.
126, Dom Giordano of Kiski ends up walking away with the title. At 132 pounds, it was Matt Sarbo of Altoona, and he knocks off Trent Donahue of DuBois. Yeah,
that was a rematch of last year where Donahue was able to get the win, and actually Sarbo was a state medalist 2 years ago. Donahue was a state medalist last year, so kind of a rubber match here between these guys. Sarbo ended up dominating it 11-3, so impressed with him. Garrett Thompson was able to come back to take third for Franklin Regional.
138 pounds, Nathan Stone of Franklin Regional walks away with the title, beating Parker Loera of Bethel Park. Stone also knocked off Chandler Ho of DuBois.
Yeah, Chandler Ho came in ranked number 10 in the state as a returning state qualifier. Nathan Stone's only a freshman. I mean, he was number 22 on our top incoming freshman report. He's a solid guy. I think he was third at PJW States last year. He's a worker, man. I just like watching him wrestle. Really, first time I got to see him, and he looked really good. I think 38's a good weight for him there.
And he knocks off a guy in the round of 16, Ethan Connor from Kiski, and Connor comes back all the way for 5th place. So a couple of names to watch out for these young guys.
Yeah, absolutely, and it didn't stop there. 145, Jared Kessler from Connellsville, who we got to see at the Surge this year. He was a runner-up at the Surge at 138 pounds, and he's back at 145 this year, and he beat Mason Spears in a very good match. Spears, also a guy who we got to see at the Surge. Just both these guys really left it out there. Really high physical, high action match. A lot of good hand fighting here. So 2 guys that are you could tell they've been wrestling at a high level for quite some time here. So very good to see them. Jackson Gray from Mount Lebanon comes back to take third. Mason Spears actually beat him in the semifinals, which was a big win for him. So another really deep weight class. And you had Tony Salopek from West Mifflin as well. So top 4 here were really tough.
152 pounds, a pair of teammates face off in the semifinals. Enzo Morlacki ends up pinning Sam Starr, and then Ed Scott ends up winning the title over Morlacki.
Yeah, and that was an interesting one. And a lot of people kind of forget that you can enter more than one wrestler at a weight in some tournaments. So, a lot of people were kind of confused by that and how they could get away with that. Well, I mean, you looked at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic. I think Nazareth had 2 guys at almost every single weight. So it's up to the tournament director's discretion. Like, obviously, Powerade, we're not going to have 2 guys from every school there. But, yeah, it was actually – Sammy was winning that match when he got pinned. He was up on Enzo before he got pinned, so he comes back to take third. And Enzo, I mean, he kept it close with Ed Scott, who's a Division I recruit going to NC State, a state champion. I do expect him to go down to 45 at some point, but Enzo kind of. Those are 2 guys that are both very physical, both like to go upper body, but Ed Scott was able to come away with the win.
Jack Bloomer walks away with the 160-pound title. Question now is, and then we're going to talk about 170, which is where Nick Delp checks in. What are they going to do here with, you have Morlacki and Starr? Do you think one of those guys is going to drop down a weight?
I don't know. I mean, Sammy looked big, and I could see maybe Enzo going down. But I think for the time being, they're probably just going to both stay at 52 and for dual meet purposes, kind of both get plugged in.
Bump everybody up.
Yeah, I mean, but I really can't see right now either of them making 45, maybe 47. Maybe we can see Enzo get down, but Sammy, I mean, we saw him at the Surge. He looked pretty big there. He's starting to look like his brothers. So I would see him maybe going up, not down.
Yeah, it's a way to get all 4 people in the lineup, but come dual season time, it will be all 4 guys coming into the mix here. So 170 pounds. We talk about Jack Bloomer winning 160, 170. Nick Delp does come up short, and he loses by a big decision to Max Stout of Mount Lebanon, 12-5.
Yeah, this was another very physical matchup here between Mac and Nick, and these guys know each other. They've wrestled before. They both kind of compete in the Quest School of Wrestling, so they're definitely not foreign to each other. Mac was able to get some big takedowns to turns, and actually one time he kind of dumped Nick down, and he kind of landed on his shoulder weird, and then they stopped the match. But it was definitely a physical match. I was impressed with the way Mac was able to control certain positions, and Nick, I think, is going to come back from this. I think he's going to be okay, but this was a high level match between 2 guys that are going to be competing for a state title potentially this year.
You think both these guys will see each other again a couple more times?
I originally thought Mac was going to be down to 60 for the season, but I don't know, man. He looked. I don't know what they eat in the Stout household, but I mean they are filled out, both him and Luke. So I don't know how Mac's going to be able to get down to 60 if he does. So he may stay here. So yeah, I mean they definitely could see each other.
182 pounds, Dakota Rogers of Connellsville walked away with the title, beating Riley O'Mara of Bethel Park 6-4 to win that. Speaking of the Stouts, at 195 pounds, Luke Stout ends up winning the title, and he defeats Luke Montgomery of Bethel Park 11-4.
Yeah, I mean, those are 2 state medalists going at it. Luke Stout, returning state runner-up, and both these guys are highly touted wrestlers in the state, both Division I recruits. Luke was just absolutely phenomenal at 195 pounds, and we're going to be fortunate enough to talk to him here in a couple seconds. But he beat Brandon Roskowski from Kiski area, kind of toyed with him a little bit. Another deep weight class. You had Cole Whitmer as well. He was here. He took 4th. But Luke looked really good at 95. I was kind of surprised to see him at 95. I thought maybe he'd be at 82, but he looked every bit of 95. So, we may not see him come back down. I don't know. That's scary for the rest of the state.
And really, if you look at Cole Whitmer as well, finishes in 4th place. He actually dropped the 7-5 decision to Braden Roskowski. 220 pounds. It was Jack Diltz of Kiski area taking home the title. He defeats Ty Banco of Trinity to win that one. And at 285 pounds, Stone Joseph of Kiski area finishes in 3rd place. DJ Moring of McKeesport knocked him off in the semis with a fall and then ends up winning the title.
Yeah, and that was a rematch from the Surge. DJ Moring beat Stone at the Surge, and he dominated this tournament, man. He's going to be really fun to watch this year. Only a sophomore. He got a fall in the finals in 18 seconds. So very impressed by him. I'm not surprised whatsoever. He's ranked top 10 in the state for a reason. I think he's going to be a threat this year.
And now joining us on the show, the senior from Mount Lebanon, Luke Stout. Luke, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
Well, coming off your season a year ago where you ended up with the state runner-up finish, let's first talk about your season last year. I'm sure it didn't finish the way you were hoping, being at the top of the podium, but were you happy with how things went as far as with the WPIAL and the state tournament?
Yeah, I was happy. I was happy with how I wrestled, how I performed and everything. And, looking back on it, I am happy how it turned out. Like, obviously I would have won it first, but I think that runner-up kind of just added more fuel to the fire, and I got to learn a lot of things in that finals match, and just pick up on a lot of things that I can improve on. And I think ending the season on a loss, it kind of really changed my outlook on wrestling and, winning and losing and all of that.
So what were some of the things in the off-season you really worked on?
I try to work on a lot of things. With it being summer, freestyle season ramping up, I got to work on a lot of freestyle, so that was great. Just kind of different positioning things. I worked a lot on top because that's not my strongest position, so trying to get to turning guys more, and just kept improving on everything that I've been doing. Just attacks from my feet and good shot defense, and just all the solid technique that's gotten to me where I am now.
And then you made your decision and head into Princeton to continue your wrestling career. Talk about that decision and what how that came about.
Yeah, that was it was a long process, but I'm very glad how it turned out. I'm really excited to see how my future's going to turn out too in the up and coming year. I'm really excited to get up there and wrestle and continue everything I've been doing. And I don't think anywhere else had a better balance of academics and wrestling than Princeton, and that's ultimately why I chose Princeton. I thought they had really good coaches, a great team, and I think everybody is really fighting for that national championship out there, which is also my common goal. So I think there's just really good energy up there where I can get everything I want done.
How much was your brother pulling for you to get the pit?
He was pulling hard, and that was a hard decision, really hard decision, for sure.
I can imagine. So this year you start the season at 195. Was it tough starting at the Eastern area, up a weight class?
No, I don't think it was. I felt great. I'm kind of in between both weight classes, and I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of losing weight really, and I think I wrestle my best when I'm strong and I just can wrestle as hard as I want and lift whenever I want, and I think that's going to be a good system this year.
And Luke, in the finals, you had Luke Montgomery from Bethel Park, who's a state medalist himself, and he actually got the first takedown on you, and then you kind of came back and you threw him to his back. After that first initial takedown, you didn't look too unfazed. Talk about that finals match with a pretty good opponent in Montgomery.
Yeah, I was glad I got a tougher match in that finals match. Me and Luke, we practice a decent amount out at Quest, so we've wrestled with each other quite a bit. And like you said, he got me with that first takedown. I got a little sloppy state on my knees with after I took a shot, and he knee picked me. But I got right back to my feet, and I started getting to all my stuff on my feet. And I think keeping that pace high is what really where I'm really my best, where I keep firing off shots, and I think that's when I really start turning it on.
Now, your brother actually, he won the Outstanding Wrestler Award, correct? Mac did. When they announced it first, we all kind of looked at each other like, did they mean Luke? Because Luke dominated, but you had to be pretty happy for Mac the fact that he won the Outstanding Wrestler Award.
Yeah, definitely. I thought he deserved it. He wrestled really hard all week, and then I think he had an awesome finals match and really kind of showed everyone who he is.
Talk about his development, because I feel like he kind of had kind of like you did. When you went out to Fargo, you won a national title, you kind of burst onto the scene. Mac had a really good off season this past season. He did well at the Journeyman Classic, and he looks like basically just like you in terms of growing and getting stronger. I think he's going to be a threat this year. Do you think he's ready to make that jump this year?
Definitely. I think he's definitely a competitor at those top first, second, third, fourth places. I think it's not out of the possibility of him winning the whole thing, and I think that's his goal too. We're both kind of in the same boat right now, trying to work for that state title.
Now, looking up for the rest of your season, I know you got POWRade coming up. You were third there last year. Talk about that atmosphere, kind of your last go at POWRade to get the title. What's it going to be like for you going into your last POWRade?
I'm sure it'll be pretty bittersweet. I guess it's not my last time in that Cannon Mac gym with everyone looking at you, but we still have whip-wheels. But POWRAde's always a fun tournament. You see a bunch of kids you never really see during the season, and there's a ton of people watching. I think it's really fun and competitive, and you get some cool gear, and it's all like televised and everything, so your friends can watch that. I think it's going to be really fun going out and trying to win the whole thing.
Now, Kellen won a title there, right? I think he did. Yeah, he won a senior. That's right, because Zavatsky was before him. So you got to outdo your brother, right? You got to get a title. Now you said you don't necessarily like cutting weight, and you looked pretty full at 195. I mean, do you think that's kind of a good weight for you, or do you think maybe you'll descent down to 82, or have you not made up your mind quite yet?
I really haven't made up my mind, but I don't know, as I keep on going and wrestling where I'm at now, I feel like 95, I might stick here. I'm really not 100% sure, though.
Well, we look forward to seeing what transpires, and like I said, in the finals at Eastern Areas, you looked definitely like a full-size 195 pounder. So, congratulations on that title at Eastern Area, and tell Matt congratulations for winning the Outstanding Wrestler Award, because I think a lot of people are like, "Wow, Mac, not Luke." But no, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. I was glad for that. Yeah.
So do you have to go back into the wrestling room, though, and show them, hey, I'm still the bigger brother, I'm the better wrestler?
Yeah, we went at it today a little bit. Yeah.
Well, Luke, we appreciate you taking some time out to join us, and best of luck as you head through your senior campaign.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Luke.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks to Luke Stout for joining us on the show. Now we'll get into the Chartiers-Houston tournament from this past weekend. Some good action and some guys making some noise. You look at 106 pounds. Anthony Ferraro of Pine Richland, he ends up taking the title. He defeats James Anderson of South Fayette for first place. Both guys are freshmen. 113 pounds, Levi Donnell of Butler coming in unseeded, and he ends up getting 4 total tech fall plus 3 falls to win the championship. He pins Ashton Sadowski of Chartiers Valley for first.
Yeah, I was impressed with Levi. Levi's a guy who we had on our top incoming freshman report, very highly touted wrestler. I was curious to see how he'd do, especially starting the season off at 113, and he did not disappoint. Maybe not the strongest of competition for him, but still just a dominating performance.
120 pounds, Matt Inman ends up walking away with the title. Good matchup, and a guy I just want to point out quickly is Joey Senapal of Burgestown. I expect some good things from him this upcoming season. He ends up battling back for third after a tough quarterfinal matchup with Inman. 126 pounds, Ryan Michaels, 4 total falls to win the championship, including a fall over Bryce Wilkes, Peters Township.
Yeah, very impressed with the way Ryan Michaels wrestled. Recently committed to Campbell and just really dominated the field here, including a nice win over Bryce Wilkes, who kind of dominated his own way to the finals here. So for Ryan Michaels, I do expect him to probably descent down to 120, but really good start to the season for him.
132, Dylan Evans of Chartiers Valley coming in unseeded. He ends up with 2 falls, 2 techs, and then a 3-1 decision over Keelan Laffey of Pine Richland to win the title. Good performance from Dylan. Yeah,
definitely a good way to start your campaign as a freshman, is coming in and dominating some older competition here. He's definitely a guy who I think is going to be in the mix, either at 126 or 132, depending on where he goes. And it's hard to say with freshmen because you don't want them to necessarily cut too much weight because they're growing naturally. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him stay up at 132, but he really showed that he can hang with those guys, beating seniors like Jeremy McPherson and then defeating for the second time in a couple months Keelan Laffey from Pine Richland. So really good start for the season for Dylan.
We talked a little bit earlier about Sam Hilligus of North Hills of 138. 4 first period falls for Hilligus to win the title. 145, Ken Dushak of Freedom. He wins the title, and he knocked off Eddie Hune of Carlinton by major decision in the semifinals before winning a matchup against Oakland's Jonathan Crease to win the title there. 152 pounds, Peyton Hall of Oak Glen was your champion. He beats Nathan Lucas of Pine Richland in the finals. 160 pounds, Cole Spencer of Pine Richland had an off year last year after a fantastic freshman campaign, and he ends up winning by major decision over Shane Kemper of Burgestown, 9-0 for the title.
You know, and that was an interesting match for me because remember Cole's coming off of they didn't have a state run in football because he's the starting quarterback for Pine Richland. But I think they made it to the WPIAL finals maybe against Central Catholic, or they made it deep into the WPIAL playoffs. So, how much time off or does it going to take for him to get into wrestling shape, because everyone knows there's a huge difference between being in football shape and wrestling shape, and especially down at 160 for him. But he really dominated here, like you said, 3 first period falls before majoring a really tough Shane Kemper. So it seems like he's picking up kind of where he started as a freshman, because as you said, last year maybe a little bit of an off year for him. He's recently committed to Penn to wrestle, so I think that's off his shoulders now. Excited to see where Cole ends up here, because as you mentioned, as a state medalist his freshman year, a lot of high aspirations.
170 pounds, Eli Brinsky of South Fayette with the title. 182 pounds, it was Donovan McMillan, of Peters Township. He had the big win over Trent Schulteis of Freedom, 10-6 in overtime.
Yeah, this was a huge matchup here for a couple of reasons. One, Trent Schulteis is up quite a few weight classes here. Excited to see how he competed. I think 82 is a little bit too big for him. I think he probably needs to get down a little bit in weight. And Donovan McMillan, man, he's a guy who I feel like's been on the cusp of breaking out for a while. I think he's a pretty good football player too. Again, how is he going to perform after a long football season? So he apparently is going to do pretty well, considering he just beat a state runner-up in Trent Schulteis. So I'm excited to see Donovan and see if he can make it to the state tournament this year.
195 pounds, Logan Harmon of Armstrong, 3 falls and a major decision to win the title. 220 pounds, Josh Sarasnik of Chartiers Valley. He defeats Damon Thompson of North Hills 4-3 for the championship. And 285, Riley Kemper of Burgestown pins his way through 4 first-period falls. Also got his 100th victory, and Kemper was the champ.
Yep, very impressive there for Kemper. I would have liked to see Quint Franklin from South Fayette there, but I believe he's nursing an injury. I think he should be back, but Kemper kind of went in untested.
And I'll tell you what, we talked a little bit about AA last week and what team might be able to challenge Burrell. We threw a few teams out there because of the competitive nature of the second-place bid. Burgestown was a number 2 seed going into the tournament, and I think it's a little bit forgotten because of how they got upset in the quarterfinals, and because it's only, the double elimination at the semis, and Freedom ends up placing second. Burgestown looked strong. They finished with 161.5 points, third place, but first overall as far as AA teams. And they didn't lose really anybody from last year, and they got more guys in, like Joey Senapal and a few others. They're going to be deep, and they could be the challenger to Burrell. I think they probably are going to be the challenger. I was impressed very much with the Chartiers-Houston result that Burgestown had. And like you said, looking back on their roster, they didn't lose a ton, and they reload with some other guys here. I think they're going to be a threat for sure. So, Burgestown, if they can keep guys healthy, they may be the number 2 team. But again, they got upset last year, so people are kind of looking at, are they actually able to do it this year? I'm sure they haven't forgot about that, though. I mean, they pulled off a couple upsets to win the section championship and now to get that number 2 seed. And I think some people were surprised they got that number 2 seed, and then they ended up with that upset loss. So now they're trying to make, show that they actually were deserving of that. You look at some results from the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic as well. At 106 pounds, Hunter Swedish of Seneca Valley finishes in second place at 106.
Yeah, he battled Dom Fendora from downtown West Tight, who was a state qualifier last year. So Swedish is there, and they also have Tyler Chappell, Dylan's younger brother. He's a very undersized freshman at 106 pounds. They both entered the tournament to compete.
113 pounds, Jacob Haupt of Cannon McMillan. He ends up finishing in second place. At 120 pounds, Dylan Chappell of Seneca Valley. He is defeated by Ben Mon of Cumberland Valley. 3-1.
Yeah, Dylan's up to 120 this year, and Ben Mon really, he's a solid wrestler. He's a 2-time state medalist, and I knew this was probably going to be a pretty tight match. Dylan likes to, he tends to keep things a little close, but Ben does too. So I think we could probably see this one again sometime. But yeah, excited to see where these two end up come March.
Do you see Dylan Chappell going down?
I don't think so, man. He looks pretty good sized at 120. I think it'd be tough for him to get down to 15, but I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but
especially with the loss to Mon, he might be thinking about it.
Maybe, but I mean, I think Mon could end up going to 13 too. I think he wrestled 13 at Super 32, so I don't know. I think Dylan's focused on right now and trying to improve upon his his weekend, but I think these are two guys that are going to probably end up finishing on the podium.
I would love to see Dylan Chappell open up a little bit, open up his offense. I know he's got it. It just he can wrestle defensively at times, especially in big matches like that. If he could open up a little bit, I think he could really be. Obviously he's a state runner-up, so of course he's a great wrestler. But I just feel like sometimes he kind of keeps his offense in. Yeah,
I mean, I think the best we saw maybe of Dylan was last year at Powerade, up until the finals against Gary Steen. I mean, he was really wrestling tough, even at King of the Mountain too, when he wrestled Finn Solomon. And I think he's definitely somebody that when he is offensive, he's really tough to beat because he is really stingy defensively. It's just a matter of how opening that up, right? So I agree. He opens up. I think he's definitely going to be better, than he was last year.
No WPIAL wrestlers placed at 126 pounds. 132, Ali Herrera Rondon. He ends up winning a tight match with Will Betancourt of Mannheim, 1-0.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all to see a 1-0 win here for Ali. He's just so tough from the top position, and he's another one like Dylan. He opens up. He's on fire. Will Betancourt's a very tough wrestler, a state medalist going to Lock Haven, but not surprised to see this one be a little tight.
Jimmy Baxter, Cannon McMillan also finished in 6th place at that weight class. 138 pounds, known from Chan Shear of Seneca Valley, placing 3rd at 138.
Yeah, that was a good weight for Chan's. There was he had Bryce Brennan, who was a state medalist last year, and Nick Foster, who was very surprising in how good he was here. But Chan's, I thought, had some good wins.
145, Antonio Emilio of Seneca Valley, a championship over Cade Balestrini of Shikellamy. Also, Gabriel Stafford of Cannon McMillan finishing in 4th place.
Yeah, definitely really impressed with Emilio here. He beat Balestrini, who's a returning state medalist. Emilio's a guy who I was surprised to see down at 45 already this year, and Vlasnik up to 52. So, Emilio had a really good win over Balestrini. I was also very impressed with Gabe Stafford from Cannon Mac as a freshman coming in to take 4th. Very impressive.
152, Drew Vlasnik of Seneca Valley finishing in 3rd place. 160 pounds, no WPIAL wrestlers medaling at that weight. 170 pounds, Liam Volklos of Seneca Valley finishing in 3rd. He defeats Matthew Furman of Cannon McMillan 3-2 for 3rd place. Furman in 4th. Also Marshall Adamson of Seneca Valley finishing in 5th place. 182 pounds, no WPIAL wrestlers medaled at that weight. 195, also no WPIAL wrestlers there. 220 pounds, Evan Miller of Cannon McMillan finishing in 4th. Nick Funavides of Seneca Valley finishing in 5th, and 285 pounds, Giomar Ramos of Cannon McMillan finishing in 2nd place, Davin Bame of Seneca Valley in 6th.
Yeah, and obviously Cannon Mac was down a few guys, right? They were down Garrett Ninehouse, obviously. The biggest name on their team was not there. Tanner O'Haley, also a guy who didn't compete, so I think they got to get healthy, especially with a quad meet coming up here in a couple weeks here. But Seneca Valley won the title. Seneca Valley won the team title. Nazareth is really freaking good, and they finished ahead of Nazareth. So Nazareth was missing a few guys as well. State runner-up Deshaun Farber and 2-time state medalist Stefanik, but Seneca Valley, I think, looked pretty strong here, especially some of those guys, like you said, Emilio and Chantier and Volklaus. I thought they all looked good. So excited to see where Seneca Valley kind of, because I'm not saying I disrespected them the week prior, but we kind of talked about Waynesburg, Kiski, Canon-Mac, and Seneca was an afterthought kind of. But
and Hempfield too in that mix there,
well, obviously, yeah.
Seneca Valley in that number 5 spot looking into the top 4. I think the biggest issue with Seneca Valley is depth. It was the same issue they had last year. They have all those big-name guys, right? From 106 to 145 last year, boy, they were tough to beat. But then from there is where they kind of ran into their challenges, right? Because they had a couple of guys who could do okay, average wrestlers, and then they had some weak spots.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I guess we'll find out, especially with the quad coming up on the 20th.
With the guys moving up in weight, right? Dylan Chappell going to 20, Herrera Rondon going to 32. Everybody kind of going up a couple weight classes. If you can get a couple of those younger guys in there, they might be able to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look at this upcoming weekend's wrestling action. As far as tournaments go, King of the Mountain coming up this upcoming weekend. That's probably the biggest tournament.
Yeah, in terms of WPIAL wrestlers, I mean, there's going to be quite a few teams there. Some big names such as Burrell, Canon-Mac, Franklin Regional, and TJ are going to be there. Penn Trafford, Trinity, and Chartiers Valley as well. So some lot of big names there. But I'll be at Ironman to see Fraser, Seneca Valley, and Waynesburg. Very, very excited to see how Waynesburg, those young freshmen, and Seneca Valley and Alley, he got second there last year. Can he kind of repeat that performance? He's a top seed or pre-seed at 132 this year. And of course, Thane Lawrence, how's he going to compete for Fraser? So excited to see where these guys end up. I'm really kind of curious about the Moon Duels too, because Kiski area is there, but so is Hempfield.
Yeah, that'll be a great one to see early on. And you actually look at some of the section matches that are scheduled for this week. Kiski's going to wrestle Norwin, and Penn Trafford's going to wrestle Franklin Regional. Should be a couple of good ones.
Yeah, I agree. Early good section matches here, and PTs. I think Franklin Regional's got a tough task on their hands with Penn Trafford.
So we got section matches coming up starting here this upcoming week, and then obviously we got the tournaments coming up here this weekend. Should be a lot of fun to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to see how all these WPIAL wrestlers perform, especially as the season starts rolling on. Before you know it, we'll be gearing up for Powerade. So
yeah, I mean, if you look at it, we got King of the Mountain and Ironman this weekend, two of the big tournaments, as well as the Moon Duels. You mentioned that, but you got Beasts of the East the following weekend. Not too many WPIAL teams out there. It's almost kind of like an off weekend for most schools, but then you're right into it. Powerade, Southmoreland, the Steve DiAugustino at West Mifflin. Almost every WPIAL school is at those three tournaments.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's not many schools. I don't know if there's any WPIAL schools that aren't at one of those tournaments. So, yeah, it doesn't slow down. It's really picking up now, and that means we're going to be busy. I'll be busy with rankings. Rankings they've been a little bit tough for me this year, man. They've been tough.
What makes it so difficult?
Just because we're on two different platforms. Because I upload the rankings to both Rockfin and PA Power Wrestling. So because anyone who's a PA Power Wrestling member who still has an active subscription on PA Power can view them on PA Power Wrestling. But I have to put them up on Rockfin as well for the new subscribers on there as well. So it can be a little tough.
I thought you meant just ranking the kids was getting difficult.
That's easy. No, that's easy.
That's easy. They've separated themselves?
No. I'm not saying they separate, but it's easy in the beginning because you get guys down to weight where they are. You go off of some of last season and some off-season results, some good ranked matchups that happened over the weekend. So you're starting to see
a little clarity now after this past weekend's wrestling action, but I'll tell you what, I would think this is probably the toughest time, is it, when you start the season off, because one, you don't know where some of these kids are at weight-wise, and then you enter in some of these freshmen we've talked about today. It's easier
now than it has been in years past to rank freshmen, because these freshmen that we have coming in are so battle-tested. It's not hard to put where Rocco Welsh and Mac Church are going to be, right? Because I've seen them compete against high school level guys. Same with like Dylan Evans and Grant McKay and all these other guys that are coming in as high level freshmen. The hardest thing is getting guys at the right weight class. Now, I'd say the hardest week for me to do rankings is right before the drop, the 2-pound allowance, because you have guys all over the board moving around, and you may not have their weights until after I post rankings. So like you're going to have all these guys at different weight classes competing. So that's probably a little bit more difficult than the early season one, in my opinion.
And what's the date of that again?
When they get the 2 pound is Christmas.
Okay.
Merry Christmas. 2 pounds. Great.
I feel like that's moved back.
It was when we wrestled. It was in January.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I forget what day in January, but my birthday's in January, so I always knew it was around my birthday. But they did these, it's the society, they're getting easier on these kids.
Well, and you know what? It's like the season started, this past weekend, so we're talking 2 or 3 weeks. Why don't they
What's the point, right?
Yeah. Why not just give it to them in the beginning? I don't understand that.
I don't know. It's goofy.
It should either be in January, or you might as well just start the whole season off with giving them 2 pounds.
Right.
And then at that point, you might as well just call it what it is.
Yeah, it's 115 or
108,
it's
115.
Right.
And you just say the actual weight classes because it gets confusing. I mean, and for only, 2 or 3 weeks? And then really you're missing out on a couple big tournaments where you could see guys down in their right weight.
Yeah.
Those tournaments could be a lot of fun.
Maybe we should give them a 3rd pound in February, right?
Maybe a pound a month, right?
Pound a month, there you go.
Yeah, so December you won't give any, January a pound, February a pound, March, I mean, who knows?
That could be kind of cool. I don't know. Kind of crazy, too. But
it is.
Yeah.
I actually liked when it was January getting the 2 pounds, though. Like, to me, December 25th is too early.
It's pretty early.
It's way too early. Because that's what you look forward to, is that January, like, you get through the holidays, you get through the New Year, and by the way, now that present's here, you got 2 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Obviously as a kid, I'm going to like it earlier. But
no doubt about it. I would have loved it when I was wrestling to have it in December, but I don't know. To me, it's just...
If you're going to have it, just might as well call it what it is. Like,
right.
If you're going to, why even have them weigh in for 2 weeks, 25 days, essentially. It's kind of silly. I agree with you.
Yeah, and especially when you only wrestle maybe 2 of those weekends.
Right.
Or 2 of those weeks out of the 3 that are there because of the holidays.
None of the main big matches, none of the postseason, not even close to the postseason matches, are competed at flat weight. So, it's good for those teams that have more flexibility for sure, but it can be a little difficult for guys that can't fill lineups, especially to get guys down in weights. But I don't know.
We'll see what happens. Especially with the weight changes that have been proposed. You never know what
Don't get me
happen.
on it. Don't get me on started on that.
You love those, right?
Yeah, I'm all for it. Dropping 2 weight classes. That's a great idea. The greatest state in the nation of wrestling, and we're going to drop 2 weight classes.
What gets me about
Phenomenal idea.
Well, what gets me is that they're going to drop the lightweight. I get that you see a lot of forfeits out of there during the season. But how many great wrestlers wrestle in that lightweights, and what are they going to do?
There is no logical argument for it.
To me, I feel like you're better off cutting a heavier weight than you are cutting a lightweight because you get more great matches out of the lightweights. And then those kids, we talked about a few kids being too light at 106 today.
Yeah, there are
too light.
There's a lot of guys.
And you're going to cut 106.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And start at where? Where would they start at?
I don't know, 110 or something. I don't care what there is. There is absolutely no logical argument for.
I don't know why they raised it to 106 to begin with.
Well, it's based on the National Federation of High School and their years of analysis of average weight of the high school guy. So I don't know. That's regardless. The fact of the matter is, there's no way that eliminating 2 weight classes is going to somehow make wrestling dual meets more exciting because we're going to have less forfeits. You're
still going to have tons of forfeits with 12 weight classes.
It doesn't matter, right? Smaller schools are not going to say, oh my gosh, we lost 2 weight classes. We can fill a lineup and now we're going to have all
of a sudden we're going to magically get 4 more people to sign up.
Right. It's not going to happen. And fans are going to go regardless. You're punishing the wrestlers, you're punishing the kids, you're punishing the guys that may not necessarily make a lineup, and guys that are kind of on the cusp, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. Like, it's just, I told you not to get me worked up.
Well, the proposed changes, when would they go into effect? Next year?
Next year, yeah.
So
we still have they're not going to meet on it until April again. So we got a while.
So it sounds like we got to talk about it every show.
Listen, you can talk about it as much as you want, but no one's listening. No one from the people that matter really care. It's all politics, man.
It is.
It's all politics.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
Well, we want to thank Luke Stout of Mount Lebanon for joining us on the show. And
don't want to end on such a bad note.
I know, that's why I want to thank Luke. He was the highlight.
Luke was the highlight. Normally our guests are always the highlights of our show because you and I are certainly not highlights.
No.
Luke
no
Stout,
chance.
definitely a highlight.
Luke Stout, he's got lots of Twitter followers. Greg Warnock has no Twitter followers.
Zero Twitter followers.
So
maybe a couple.
He is the highlight, no doubt about it.
Right.
I mean, I think Joe Throckmorton probably doesn't even have Twitter, but he has more followers than I have.
He probably does.
So that's why, the guests are the highlight.
Sure.
No doubt about it.
Right.
And we appreciate Luke for joining us. And it's a good thing he and Mac didn't have to wrestle over the phone or anything.
Right. I'd actually like to see that match. Throw him, Kellen, and Mac in a room together, and Brian can kind of, referee his kids there and see what happens. That'd be fun.
I like it.
I'll tell you what, man. They are freaks of nature, man. Those guys are really put together.
They are. I can't wait to see how Mac and Luke do this year.
Yeah, me too.
They're a lot of fun
to watch. Yeah. They're just really fun to watch. Like, they're exciting, and they're always going. So I like watching those guys wrestle.
Well, again, I want to thank Luke for joining us on the show, and I want to thank all of you for listening in. Make sure you stay with us through social medias. We're going to have updates throughout the entire week, and we'll be back this time next week for a new podcast and get you set and ready to go for another week of wrestling action. For Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. Thanks for listening in to WarUp on a WPIAL.